Welcome, everybody. Glad you could make it here tonight. Welcome to the Baldwin County Annex here in Robertsdale. Here tonight to talk about wastewater, its management, treatment, as well as perceived versus actual issues that sometimes come out in the media and with our sewer services. We want to be able to offer this kind of communication with our utilities, and like to thank the Baldwin County Commission for hosting this event. It came from a desire that they heard from the public on certain questions back during the campaign, and they were able to secure the time with all of these valuable people up here representing all of the utility, almost all of the utility services from Baldwin County. They'll be introduced here in just a second. We have with us Mayor Murphy from Robertsdale, and was Commissioner Ball back in the back, and Commissioner Gruber here from Baldwin County. On the stage, we have representatives from Fairhope, North Baldwin Utilities, Riviera, Daphne, Gulf Shores, and Robertsdale. They're all going to get a chance to talk in just a minute. We also have a representative from Baldwin County Sewer Service behind me. She'll go back up on stage in just a little bit, but she's going to be giving a presentation when we finish up with some introductions here. Just a few housekeeping comments, if you will, and you got a cell phone on you, it's time to put it on vibrate so we don't get any really Coolio rings going on. We have a few that sound like they were from a James Bond movie. I heard them earlier. Also, take a note of your exit locations. Restrooms, if you must go to one, out the doors and down the hallway. We appreciate security being provided tonight by our Baldwin County Sheriff's Office. As well, I would like to note that each of the representatives are going to get a chance to talk tonight. They'll have 5 minutes or so after our initial presentation, and then we'll go into the question and answer. And with that, I will offer the rules of conduct then when we get ready to go. But if you will, hold your questions until the question and answer period. Before we get going on the full agenda, Commissioner Gruber, would you like to say a couple of things?
First of all, thank every one of y'all for coming out this evening. And I want to say thank you to the utility companies, because when I talked to them the first time, every one of these folks wanted to get their story out. You know, they're doing a job that is very hard to do. They're providing a service for the citizens that live in this county, and they have problems at times, but it's not because they caused them. It's an act of God, people putting stuff down in sewer lines. I mean, they could tell you some nightmares what they find in their sewer lift stations, their manholes and everything else. People putting water, popping up lids in their yard, let the water go, you know. And this is a lot of different things, but these folks, they're here. They are truly public servants, because they do provide a service that nobody else would do. And I thank them so very much for being so kind to me and wanting to come here and discuss what's going on with sewer, how sewer works. A lot of people don't know how it works. They flush the lid and say, well, they don't worry about it from there. You know, they don't care until something happens, and they say, oh, now it's the sewer company's fault. But anyway, thank y'all, and my fellow commissioners and mayor, I thank you so very much, because I talked to you, and you know, you were so very kind, you know, to agree with me that this needed to happen. And again, thank you all so much. Thank everybody for coming out this evening and taking your time to listen to what these folks have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is being live streamed on Facebook on the Baldwin County Commission Facebook channel. And so it will be recorded, and you can come back and take a look at it later on if you'd like, or if you want to quietly text your friends and tell them, hey, this is on right now, you can do that. That would be greatly appreciated. As we get ready to move forward, just remember that we are going to be respectful of our time tonight. This short presentation on Sewer 101 will start here in just a second, and then we're going to go into the rest of the agenda. So thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Williams, and I'm going to tell y'all just a little bit about what we do in the wastewater industry. I'm not going to tell you the best way to plunge your toilet, as my husband teases me that that's what I do every day because I work at a sewer company. All right, so this graphic just gives you an idea of, all of the water fixtures you use in your home. The used water is wastewater, and that exits the home from the sinks, toilets, showers, laundry, all of that goes out your home through a series of pipes and lift stations to the nearest wastewater treatment facility, and then it's treated and cleaned and returned to the environment. And Alabama Coastal Foundation has been gracious to work with all of us utilities in addition to the Mobile County wastewater utilities, and coming up with the Utilities United campaign to help educate the community on what we do. And so the link to the specific website on their site is joinacf.org/UU. If you want to check that out, some more information there. All right, so as you may have noticed, there's some easels around the area back in the back of this room and then throughout the lobby with the different service territories of all of the different wastewater utilities throughout Baldwin County, and there's several of us. And that kind of just shows that we mainly serve specific areas in the county. And Jacob Pierce with the Highway Department put this together, so it was really helpful. So there's some basic terms that you'll hear with this presentation and tonight, throughout the night, such as wastewater, and that's pretty much sewer. Any used water, like we mentioned, the sinks, toilets, laundry, showers, and baths. And ERU is a measurement we use in the sewer industry for measurement of that usage. It's called equivalent residential units, kind of like a BTU or kilowatt in the power and the gas industry. And a clean out is typically a white pipe with a cap that's outside of your home, maybe closer to the road or usually right by the house. And so that provides access to the sewer line or lateral that we'll talk about in a second. A grinder pump is needed in some areas where there's a pressurized sewer system in that area, or the wastewater doesn't flow properly to the main sewer line at the road. So that's usually right next to a home or building, and that pumps the wastewater out to the road. And then the lateral is the pipe that connects the house or building to the main sewer line at the road. A tap is going to be the connection from the main line to the lateral. And a main sewer line is like a transmission line that takes all the wastewater from a certain area to the wastewater treatment plants. A lift station is usually along the main sewer lines or transmission lines to pump the wastewater to the treatment plants. And it can be, there can be a lift station for a subdivision or apartment complex or more usage on a larger property. And then the wastewater treatment plant, or also known as the water reclamation facility, is a facility that cleans or treats all of that wastewater. And then, of course, wastewater treatment is treating that wastewater that it receives at the treatment plant and returning it back to the environment per ADEM's guidelines. I'm going to show just a short, I think it's about 2-minute video, kind of summarizing the treatment process. Just make sure this works. Great. I apologize, that volume was low on that video. All right, so like the video explained, if you could hear it, is that wastewater treatment is a process of screen, digestion, secondary settling, filtration, and disinfection. And there's a lot of maintenance that goes into the wastewater treatment process and at the facilities themselves. There's rigorous testing with ADEM, with the wastewater treatment operators and to ADEM, and it's a long process with that. And then most or all of the local wastewater utilities offer tours at their treatment plants. So if you're interested in visiting any of them, just call the utility and make an appointment. They'd be welcome to show you around. So ADEM, or the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, is the agency that regulates the wastewater treatment utilities and their treatment of the wastewater. And their reporting requirements are on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, depending on the quality or stream or area that they're discharging in. And they have fairly frequent visits, as far as I understand. Some are unexpected and surprise visits, and some are planned ahead of time. But they can pop in anytime and just see what's going on, make sure all the records match and everything's thorough and recorded. All right, so y'all all know that we receive a lot of rain in this area, on average over 60 inches a year. And just to kind of give you an example, a 1-inch rain is over 27,000 gallons per acre. So, you know, all of this rain affects the wastewater treatment's operations. It can affect the treatment plants, and we have to manage it as best we can. Baldwin County has been very busy. It's been growing in the recent past and shows no signs of slowing down. It's predicted to keep growing and be very popular. As you can see with some of these statistics, we're the 11th fastest growing MSA in the U.S., and that stands for Metropolitan Statistical Area. And we're projected to remain one of the fastest growing MSAs in the U.S. with a 51% population growth. I believe that was since 2000, 51% population growth. So yeah, we're growing and we're all accommodating for that growth. And this, if you want to see more information with these tables and graphs, it's on the Baldwin County Economic Development Alliance website. And so as you can see, we're gaining more and more people every year, every eight years on average. We gain about 4,000 people a year in Baldwin County. So that's affecting almost all of the wastewater utilities, especially Baldwin County Sewer Service with that growth in the county areas. And we're expanding and accommodating that growth with our systems. And in turn, the home sales are up, they're climbing, and they're going to continue to climb as predicted in the next several years. And a lot of these home sales are new construction to make way for all of the growth and the influx of population in our area. So this table shows all of the Baldwin County wastewater utilities and their total capacity at their treatment plant or plants, and their average daily flows. So the average daily amount of wastewater received at each treatment plant, or like in Baldwin County Sewer Services case, all of our treatment plants combined. So as you can see, the total capacity in Baldwin County is about 33 million gallons per day, and the average daily flows is about half that. So we are over capacity with flows. And this is showing at the treatment plants, not as much with transmission lines and those type of components. So this is ADEM's official definition of a sewer spill or sanitary sewer overflow. It's basically any spill or overflow of sewer or wastewater from a sanitary sewer system that reaches a surface water or reaches people, like reaches the public and can endanger the public. So sewer spills are a common topic around here, and we're just going to touch on some of the related terms with the sewer spills and the causes. There's various causes of sewer spills, and one of the main causes is construction and digging in areas where there are utility lines. And typically when you're digging or doing any construction in an area, even in your yard, it's recommended that you call Alabama One Call or call in the utilities to locate their underground lines so that you can avoid those at all costs and not hit those lines and with a sewer line cause a spill. So that's a big concern with the sewer spills, is the line locates and the lines being accidentally or hit without the line locates being called in. There's also grease, wipes, different inappropriate items that always enter the drains. Hopefully we're making way on spreading the word on things to keep out of the drains, like the grease, the wipe, even the flushable wipes don't break down fast enough. Things like that, they can build up in the pipes and cause blockages and overflow into the streets or properties and things like that. There's also just random causes, like a car can run over a valve and crack it and cause an overflow. So there's different random things that happen occasionally as well. And then with prevention, we can all do our part on keeping inappropriate items out of the drains and calling in locates and that sort of thing whenever we're doing things in the community. Remediation. All the utilities, whenever they become aware of a sewer spill, get out to the site where the sewer spill is as soon as possible and clean it up and put out signs, if applicable, that notify people that the sewer spill has happened in that area, and also report it to ADEM within 24 hours. And the solutions and the education kind of tie in together with, just becoming aware of what we can do, just little things we can do to prevent these things from happening. And also the wastewater utilities accommodating for growth and for rain events and things like that as much as possible. Education is just getting the word out and just talking to each other about what we can do to help. And then reporting, like I said, we have to report the sewer spills within 24 hours to ADEM, and there's a strict process with that. So on our side, the sewer utility responsibility is to meet current and future needs of the system and the area where the system is, and to uphold capital investment, just normal investment in the system, and also account for any predicted emergencies and that type of thing with hurricanes and things that can come up that are unexpected. Handle the operations and maintenance with all the costs and employees and things that go into maintaining the system. And it can be a really expensive utility to run, for sure. It's a very expensive operation. Development impact, accommodating for that growth, making sure lines are upgraded, wastewater utilities, the plants are upgraded, everything is in place for all of the development, especially in our area. And then upgrading, like we said, the lines, lift stations, things like that is needed. And then, treating the water, taking in all of the water that we send out there and then returning to the environment cleaned. And so most of you are probably aware, but, all of these terms on here are the responsibility of a property owner that are on private property. The right-of-way is typically a road, a public road, and typically a few feet on either side of a road. So even though you may mow your grass and have your mailbox next to a road and things like that, it's usually owned by a city or town or state, county, and owned by them. So, and that's usually where the main sewer lines are. But then the lateral, as we talked about earlier, that's pretty much a private sewer line on your property. And then the cleanouts, the cap that we talked about, I'm going to show you a picture in a minute if you're not familiar. And those are really important in making sure that you can access those. If the cap breaks off, you repair it so it doesn't take in extra rainwater, and then not removing them to alleviate any extra rainwater getting into them whenever there is an issue so that raw sewage gets out of them. So, and a lot of cleanouts are buried in properties with landscaping and different things, so you can always get one added by a plumber or something like that if you can't locate yours on the property. Plumbing is the indoor plumbing in a house, and then a grinder pump, like we talked about, is just if you have a pump. Some people don't. There's some areas that do and some that don't. Just being aware of what you have on your property and what it looks like and what you need to do for it. And then septic systems are on-site sewage systems, basically. So that's all a private property owner's responsibility, and it doesn't go to the public sewer service. So that's a clean out, just in a gravel area. And then that's a picture of a typical grinder pump with the panel box and everything, and that alarm will go off it'll flash if something's wrong. And this is just a little cartoon sketch of a septic system with a tank and drain field on a property. So the septic system basically just treats all the wastewater through its own process on a property in the yard and not take it away from the property. And that's it. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. We're going to hear from our utility service representatives now, and I'm going to work from my left to my right, and they're going to have about 5 minutes each to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their utility, and any comments and statements they'd like to make. So if we can start with City of Fairhope.
All right, thank you, and thank everybody for being here. My name is Richard Peterson. I'm Director of Operations for the City of Fairhope Utilities, and want to thank the County Commission, obviously, for putting this together. I think it's something we need to do more often, actually, and I think all the colleagues at the table and in the audience, we can all learn from each other, and by learning from each other, we can all be better. So I think this is great, and I appreciate that very much. I've been at Fairhope a little over 2 years now, and I feel like we're making good progress. I don't know, Jay Whitman and Tim Manuel. Tim Manuel's the chief operator of the wastewater plant. Jay Whitman's our superintendent of water and wastewater. Appreciate y'all being here, and I'm sure you've met them at the table at the booth we have. But to give you a summary of our wastewater system, we have a plant that has a capacity to treat 4 million gallons a day. Our average daily flow is about 2.4 million gallons a day. So when you look at the growth and you look at what capacity issues we may face going forward, we feel like there's about a 10-year window where we need to start to evaluate in the next 5 years what our next options may be for capacity. And, you know, we're looking at different options like reuse water for the area golf courses. We're looking at decentralized sewer systems. And we're looking to try to gain some capacity out of the plant that we have as well. So those are things that we'll be looking at down the road. We have approximately 12,500 customers. We have 80 lift stations, and they all need power. And we appreciate Riviera for providing that power to a lot of them. When the power doesn't work, sometimes it makes things exciting for us, but we try to manage our flows and deal with those issues too. Our maps would indicate that we have over 100 miles of gravity main and almost 60 miles of force main. And, you know, every one of those lines provides some key component to the collection or the transmission of wastewater. So we'd have to take care of those as well. Some of them date back, and Sherry may know more about this than I do, but maybe to the early 40s when they first started to develop the systems in Fairhope. And, you know, being close to, what, 75, 80 years old, they're not the same condition as they were when they were new. So we do need to go through and we need to rehabilitate those lines. We had a capacity study done about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. It identified some transmission capacity constraints that we'll be looking at as we continue to build growth in the system. As a result of that, we've got 2 projects on the board that are being engineered today. That would be the Church Street outfall line, which is one of the main arteries that provide flow from the south part of the system to the treatment plant. We have another transmission system on Bayou Drive and Fairhope Avenue that will provide transmission from the eastern part of our system. And those first 2 transmission projects seem to be the most critical based on the growth patterns and the actual capacities that were available. in terms of being able to upgrade pumping capacities that feed into those systems. So we're doing that. We think when we bid these projects in the next couple of months, we think that'll be in probably closer to $3 million than anything else. So we're happy to be able to get those projects started. We've got some annual rehabilitation contracts for cured in place pipe and manhole rehab. We've just bid a point repair contract that would be an annual contract, and with those two contracts we hope to spend close to $700,000 a year in terms of rehabilitation. We're in order to get the most out of these contracts, we're looking at a sampling plan that will sample stormwater in each of the watersheds of Fairhope where our wastewater system is predominant. And hopefully through that sampling plan we'll be able to target areas of high bacteria and be able to track the sources of that bacteria quicker and hopefully be able to address issues where stormwater can get into the sewer system quicker than if we don't try to do sampling and try to identify those areas. And lastly, we're looking at a side stream storage project that would involve as many as 7 ground storage tanks that we'll be pumping wastewater into during these storm events. And those ground storage tanks would be in the 150,000 to 250,000 gallon capacity range, and they will actually work out to be an eventual pre-treatment opportunity for wastewater before it gets to the wastewater plant. And part of that process is where we think we might be able to gain some capacity at the plant. So that's what we're doing right now, and I'm again, thank everybody for being here. Well, I'll be happy to answer questions as the panel gets through describing their system. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. My name is Jason Padgett, and I'm with North Baldwin Utilities. I'm General Manager, CEO. We provide water, natural gas, and processed wastewater in the northern end of the county, and we're sitting up there by ourselves for the most part. Our, water and natural gas, relatively easy. Wastewater, that's the bear in the room that we all deal with every day. We primarily just serve wastewater in the city limits of Bay Minette. We've got 2 wastewater treatment plants, one with a capacity of 2 million gallons, one at 500,000 gallons, 29 lift stations, and we're about 1.28 million gallons of average flow. We've got about 2,800 customers. Back in, our sewer system was put in the early 50s, a lot of clay pipe, a lot of old technology out there, brick manholes. We're constantly repairing and fixing. 1996, our board decided it was time to really start the process of rehabilitating our sewer system. Up till today, we've spent $18 to $20 million rehabbing our sewer system, from replacing manholes, replacing most everything at our plants, new blowers, new scrapers, laterals. We do something a little bit different in Bay Minette. We found that a lot of customers and their clean outs, and this is just a good example. You've got a low spot in your yard. You want that water out of your yard, so what do? Those customers opened up that clean out and they would leave it off and they would drain their whole yard into our sewer system. We get to treat that sewer. That causes issues for us. So we've got in-house crews that are constantly, so we go above and beyond the right-of-way. We go within 5 feet of the house because we found a lot of our infiltration coming into our system was coming from customer cleanouts. We put concrete pads around our cleanout pads so that the grass doesn't grow up over them or lawnmowers don't hit them. If you hit concrete, that lawnmower blades probably won't bend. We hear about that sometimes, but we at least know where that issue is. Borrowed money. We've gotten grants. We've gotten federal grants to help pay for this, and then the customers have to pay for it. And of course, we do rate studies just like the rest of us to we want to have the best, lowest rates that we can, but sewer is by far the utility that costs us the most to operate and run. Our biggest thing is educating our customers. We've got to educate them of what we're doing to try to prevent sanitary sewer overflows. We consider some of them acts of God. We can't control that, power outages. We've got generators. We had federal grants through Hurricane Katrina. We got 5 generators that we applied for, got grants, put generators at all of our primary lift stations. So we're working with our customers, trying to get them to understand what we're doing. We put a $2.5 million SCADA system in, which is a computer monitoring system that monitors all of our wastewater treatment facilities, all of our lift stations. It tells us flows coming in, high flows, if the motor's running, if the motor's not running, tells us amperage, and all of our operators have it on their phone. And it's going to beep, and it's going to beep at 12 o'clock at night, and it's going to beep at 3 o'clock in the morning. And our wives deal with it, but we have to. That's part of the business that we're in. Grease, we've got a great grease recycling program. Lisa and Tracy and Jeff are here also. We want grease out of the sewer systems. So many people, we go to so many houses and find that it's just wads of grease. Grease causes sanitary sewer overflows. We can't control that. And educating contractors. Just this week, we went to a facility, 8-inch main. They dug right through it. What did they fix it with? A piece of plastic, covered it back up. They dug it back up. That's what we deal with. When there's a water break, water rises to the top. When there's a gas break, we smell it. When there's a sewer break or somebody damages our sewer lines, we don't know about it until there's a blockage and then the sewer system fills up. So it takes a lot of time. Crews, we've got camera trucks. We've got vacuum trucks. We're doing everything that we can. So we take sections of town and you video, you find, fix, and repair. Find, fix, and repair. And you just take a section, you get good maps, and you mark every repair. And the best thing to educate people, if the power company or the gas company or whoever it is damages your line, you take good pictures of it and you go show them. Telecommunications people, look what you did to us. This causes us issues. And at the end of the day, when there is a sanitary sewer overflow, customers see that, and we try to explain what's causing those, why that happened. We feel like we're planning for the future. We've got a plant that's at 500,000 gallons. It's ready to put the next clarifier in for another 500,000 gallons. We don't need it, so there's no sense of having it there. So, we appreciate the county supporting us. We appreciate all of the agencies that help us getting the right word out, educating. We've got programs in schools. We've worked with our groups on grease recycling, Kelly's Kids in the summers. We love to have a tour of our plant. We had 6th graders come in. They're amazed at how a sewer plant works. So try to get out, educate, stop by any of our utilities, our facilities. We'll spend as much time as we have. Our dedicated operators, that's the other thing. You've got to have good dedicated operators that are knowledgeable to run a plant, knowledgeable to care. And it goes back to your employees. If you take care of your employees, you educate them, you teach them what needs to be done, and you see that they're making a difference, then they care about what's going on in your system. So I'll pass it on.
Thank you. James Wallace with Riviera Utilities. I'm the operations manager at Riviera. Riviera provides electric, gas, water, wastewater, cable, and internet to various locations throughout Baldwin County. Our wastewater system is primarily the city limits of Foley. We have approximately 6,000 customers. We operate a 2 million gallon a day plant. Our average flow is about 1.5 million gallons. We're currently in the process of upgrading to a 3.5 million gallon plant with a peaking capacity of 10 million gallons. So we are preparing for the future, for the growth. That plant is due to come online early 2020, February, March of 2020. Riviera also operates 44 lift stations throughout the system, approximately 110 miles of gravity sewer line, approximately 40 miles of force main. We, over the past 10 years, just like Richard and Jason mentioned, we constantly are doing upgrades, maintenance. Through several grants, we've spent approximately $1 million a year over the past 10 years on rehabilitation projects, reducing the the I&I into our system, working with customers, working with the builders, contractors, things like that to ensure they understand how they can damage our system, how they affect our system. We also have a sewer truck or a vac truck and a camera that we are constantly, every day, they're out looking, inspecting, checking for damage, checking for infiltration, things like that. We're always smoke testing, you know, in an area that may be prone to leaks. We'll go in, smoke test, work with the residents in the area to ensure they understand what's going on so that we can find the leaks and find things before it's a problem for us. Over the next 5 years, like I said, we plan to have the plant expansion in early 2020. Southeast side of Foley is really growing. So there's several force mains, lift stations, things like that will be upgraded, that we're looking at through system models, things like that, to adequately meet the growing population of Foley. So over the next five years, we typically forecast out where we're going to be, and every year we make a plan to address it. Just like everybody else here, you know, the overflows are typically things beyond our control. Flushable wipes, things that go down the toilet, down the sinks that really aren't supposed to be down there. And that's educating the general public and educating everybody on what the wastewater systems actually do is a big goal. And I do appreciate everybody being here and taking the time to listen.
Good evening. I'm Danny Lundell. I'm the General Manager of Daphne Utilities. Daphne Utilities is the water, the wastewater, and the natural gas utility provider for the city of Daphne. On the wastewater side, we primarily cover the Daphne city limits and parts of Spanish Fort, which is just to the north of us. Our wastewater system comprises about 210 miles of pipe. That's gravity and low pressure force mains. We have 81 pump stations, and our team, our crew, we're every day collecting and transporting about 3 million gallons a day of wastewater. We're moving it all the way through our system, through those 81 pumps, to our one wastewater treatment plant. At that wastewater treatment plant, we have the permitted capacity to treat 4.17 million gallons per day, but we have the ability to treat a peak of 9 million gallons a day through the plant on a short-term basis. At the plant, we treat to very, very high standards, and we routinely, on a daily basis, are removing 99% of the TSS and the BOD constituents that are in the wastewater. We return that water to the Blakely River, which is just at the head of Mobile Bay, just south of the Bayway. We have, for our wastewater system, a $6 million a year budget, and of that $6 million, we're spending about $1.5 million on rehab and rehabilitation projects on a regular basis. Just like Fairhope mentioned down here, electricity is a pretty expensive thing for us. We spend about $500,000 a year just on electricity at our wastewater plant. Riviera Utilities, you're welcome. In the past 10 years, we've spent about $14 million on upgrades just at our wastewater plant and in our collection system. And we have a capital improvement plan that we're looking to spend somewhere around $28 million over the next 10 years. Just to give you some examples of some projects we've done just in the last 12 to 18 months, we repaired our outfall line. This is the line that leaves our treatment plant, runs about 6,000 feet out into the Blakely River. We had a break in that line out at the end of it. We've inspected that line numerous times through the years, and this last time we inspected it, we found a break about 14 feet from the end, so we had to repair that. Something like that, because of the location, that was about a $50,000 project, and as some of my colleagues have mentioned, this is a really expensive business to run. We've added several new lift stations over the past 12 to 18 months. We have several annual contracts in place where we're cleaning and videoing the entirety of our system. We have point repair contracts. We have manhole rehabilitation contracts that we're doing, joint grouting, CIPP. So we are aggressively working to operate and maintain and rehabilitate our system. We have a staff of folks here I'd like to recognize. My operations manager, Bobby Purvis, is out here in the audience. Jeff Wilkins, who is our wastewater manager over the treatment plant and the collection system. Sharon Sura, who runs our water reclamation facility or our wastewater treatment plant. Johnny Grimes, who's back there in the back, he runs our compliance, which is our grease recycling program, but it's also our grease management program for restaurants, trying to make sure that even our commercial businesses are reducing the amount of fats, oils, and grease that they put into our system. But Johnny also runs our stream monitoring and coastal water quality monitoring program that we've got. And then Samantha Copples, she is our communications manager, and she is the one that you'll want to reach out to if you'd like to take a tour of our facilities. We welcome folks at any time to come see. We can do it as a tour with a group or an individual. We have lots of education programs where kids come in and tour our plant, and everyone comes away just awestruck at what's involved in actually treating wastewater. With that, I'd like to thank Commissioner Gruber for putting this together and the other commissioners. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate you having us here and giving us an opportunity to answer questions from the public and tell our story.
I'm James Morris, the facility manager of the Gulf Shores Water Reclamation Facility. Gulf Shores Utilities, we have a coverage area that stretches from County Road 10 south to the beach, from the tip of Fort Morgan to the state park. To say that we're interested in a clean coast is an understatement. We have just shy of 15,000 customers. We maintain roughly 280 miles of sewer mains. We have 54 pump stations. We have 3 sewer mains that cross underneath the intercoastal waterway. We have one that crosses underneath Little Lagoon. We have our reclamation facility. We are permitted at 4 million gallons a day. We have the capacity to treat upwards in the neighborhood of about 6 million gallons a day under extreme circumstances. We have 11 million gallons worth of emergency storage there at the water reclamation facility. It is our goal at Gulf Shores Utilities to stay about 7 to 10 years ahead of the growth curve. From looking at the charts that was put on by Jenny a little while ago, you can see that growth curve is mighty steep here in Baldwin County. On the southern end, it presents quite a few challenges for us. We have 16 grease recycling stations. We operate there in a collection system, 2 vac trucks and 1 camera trailer with a lateral launcher. So we can take a look, inspect the sewer lines all the way up through the customer's lateral to the cleanout, if need be. We have set in place a couple of years ago a wastewater policy with pre-treatment program in order to deal with the one industrial customer we have, which is the Gulf Shores Brewery. At any rate, we've partnered with Gulf Shores High School, the Career Academy, the Environmental Sciences Wing, to educate our young people on water and wastewater treatment. We've conducted a few tours out there at the location, and they are wowed by the process. And I would encourage each and every one of you to get to know your local wastewater utility and take that tour. You'll be amazed at what goes on there at those facilities and what they do in a short period of time. At Gulf Shores, we're proud that despite having one of the most restrictive permits in Baldwin County, we run roughly 79.5% below our discharge permit standards on ammonia, nitrite plus nitrate, TKN, BOD, TSS, and enteros. So we're very proud of what we do. I want to thank Commissioner Gruber and the rest of the Baldwin County Commission for giving us the opportunity to discuss the issues that we have with the public, and be happy to take any questions from anybody, when that time arises.
Hi, I'm Jenny Williams with Baldwin County Sewer Service. I handle communications here, and Jerry McManus to my left, or your right, is our CFO at Baldwin County Sewer Service. We provide wastewater service throughout Baldwin County, from Stapleton to Spanish Fort down throughout the county in different areas to Lillian, Gulf Shores. We have 5 wastewater treatment plants throughout the county with a total capacity of 3.7 million gallons per day and average daily flows of 2.4 million gallons per day. We are experiencing a lot of growth in our service territory, like I mentioned earlier, and we are continually expanding for that and planning for the future. We're adding capacity at our current plants. We're adding new plant sites, as we did last year with our Summerdale wastewater treatment plant, and we're always planning for the future, for sure. Even though we mainly offer sewer service in the areas where these other utilities don't provide sewer service, there are some areas that we do parallel lines. But so there's select areas that we provide sewer service in, but it's mainly in the county areas and the unincorporated areas of Baldwin County. But we do offer septic tank pumping as well anywhere in the county, and we do utilize those pump trucks for our operations as needed for lift station maintenance and different things. And we have a extensive fleet of vehicles and equipment, tanker trucks, additional pump trucks, different things that we utilize for emergencies and just basic operations of the system. We are heavily involved in the community with the different nonprofit organizations, charities, schools, fire departments. We're always looking to help the community as much as possible. And like everybody else mentioned, if you would like a tour of any of our 5 treatment plants, just contact me, give one of us a call. We'll arrange that. If there's any community outreach that we can be involved with, please let us know. And if there's any additional questions, please let us know. We have some materials on the table out there. You can call our main line anytime, day or night, and one of our ladies up front will handle your call personally if it's during office hours, or we have an answering service who handles all of our calls and dispatches service anytime if needed on site. Thank you.
My name is Greg Smith. I'm the city engineer for Robertsdale. Our plant has a capacity permitted about 0.95 million gallons a day. Like a lot of the other systems, we're relatively old. Our systems were built in the late 30s, early 40s for some of our lines. Of course, a lot of those over the years have been replaced and rehabbed, but a lot of our system is, relatively old. The technology that was used at the time to build that is, nothing compared to what we have today. So those systems require a little more maintenance and a little more upkeep and a little more attention sometimes. We have 26 pump stations in our system on about 75 miles of gravity and force main lines. Our discharge from our sewer plant is to Rock Creek, which goes to Blackwater River and eventually to Perdido Bay. But I'm like most of these, we all have the same concerns. We monitor our systems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and our priority is to discharge clean water back into the waterways of Baldwin County, as well as serve our customers that are relying on us for our service that we provide. Thank you.
All right, thank you, each and every one of you. Appreciate all of those statements. It's going to be now your turn to ask questions. I'm going to be assisted by Ms. Carrie Green, who is going to take a wireless microphone. A few rules of conduct. Number 1, be respectful. Number 2, since it's a wireless microphone, it may take a little time to get around. We want to use that because we are, again, live streaming this and it will be recorded. So please wait until we get the mic before you ask the question. It is important. I know there's only a few people here, but still, if you will, take only 1 minute to ask your question. Make sure it's a question, not a long statement, if you will, please. And I'll be the timer on it. And I have a microphone in front of me with a big voice, so we will be able to cull that minute down. Unless a question is specifically directed at any one of our representatives here. We'll let them decide who's going to first take it, and then if somebody else wants to weigh in and offer a comparative story or a different situation, we'll gain a lot from those different perspectives. We're going to go till about 7:40. What time is it right now? 7:40 p.m., so or a little earlier. And I'll try and, if we're not understanding your question, I may try to help and confirm what we're talking about. So, who wants to go first? Mark Birdie.
Mark Birdie with the Alabama Coastal Foundation, and I do appreciate all of your time and effort, and I will not take a full minute, but I did want to make sure to clarify the web address, joinacf.org. It's lowercase uu if you're looking around on your phone to find that, and I'll make sure that we get that out to everybody, but all that information will be on that webpage, joinacf.org, if you look at the top part of that. Thank you.
Nice question, Mark. Thank you very much. Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm Casey Fulford with the Baldwin County Soil and Water Conservation District. And through the 101 presentation and what you guys have been saying is that our county is growing at an alarming rate, I think, and you guys had mentioned that stormwater is a big issue and over, it taxes your system every once in a while when we have these big rain events. And so I was wondering what your organizations are doing to encourage and promote low-impact development and green infrastructure to combat that stormwater and to put it back in the ground so it doesn't get into your system.
Who wants to jump on that first? I think Richard ought to take it first.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I know our planning department has modified zoning and subdivision regulations over the past couple of years to include more LID type features in development. We're trying to encourage low impact developments as well. One thing we're trying to do is model our watersheds, and through that model we hope to be able to look at runoff for each proposed development and how it affects the existing runoff condition of that watershed, and then look at areas for regional detention, for example, or other techniques that we can use to keep that water from, maybe even give it more opportunity to be introduced into the groundwater system instead of into the surface water system. But, yeah, I mean, that comes from, you know, the county could be a leader in some of that as well, but it's going to start in the planning part of each city and county, and we're going to have to try to identify where the opportunities are to include those types of features in every development.
I'd like to add to what Richard's saying. In Daphne Utilities, we are a utilities board, so we're not specifically a part of the city, but our city has been gracious enough to allow us to be involved in the planning commission meetings for any new development that's coming into our area. We, at the City of Daphne, we have a fantastic environmental programs manager who's sitting in the back of the room. Her name is Ashley Campbell. Ashley is very involved with every single development that happens in the city to ensure that they are putting in place measures to decrease the amount of stormwater runoff that's impacting our area. From a utility standpoint, we have a number of standard construction specifications that can and do address some of these issues and how stormwater can impact our systems, and we try to ensure that any new development that comes in, they plan to build according to our construction specifications, and then during the construction, we're ensuring that it is built properly. And with that, I'd also like to mention that I missed one of my folks back there in the back, Alex Godfrey. Thought about it ever since I had my moment to speak, but Alex is actually one of the ones who's out inspecting all of those programs.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? No? Next question. Anybody have another question? Want to raise your hand? Yes, sir.
Hey, Kate Kistler at Mobile Baykeeper. I know many of you and appreciate the work that y'all do to help get clean water. So we talked a lot about growth, and I had some questions about capacity assurance, making sure we can get all the sewage to the treatment plant and then treat it. I'd be interested in, from some of your perspectives on how you make sure that you have capacity not only to treat the sewage, which we heard about in the presentation and from many of you, but actually to collect it and then transmit it, right? So in the lines and at the pump stations. I know some do very rigorous. I know MAW's program, I've seen their program and how they do. That's the Mobile Area Water Sewage System. Actually a really tight model on being able to see that for every development. So I'd be interested in hearing your perspectives on how you do that with your systems. And two, do you think it's tightly enough integrated into your community's planning and zoning efforts so that you don't end up dealing with a situation where a development is approved and you're trying to figure out how to get capacity to transmit and treat that sewage? So do you feel like in your community that is well enough integrated, or do you think there's a different way we could do that to make sure we're thinking about the whole process holistically when we're developing and growing in Baldwin County?
So, Kate, you're talking about having modeling ready as development occurs and their involvement using that model for the development capacity additions to their system.
Right. So how do you make sure you have capacity, and is your capacity assurance program, do you feel it's tightly enough integrated so that when we approve homes that we're actually thinking about that in that same process? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, James.
Riviera, like Danny said, we're involved with the Planning Commission right up front. We not only work with them, we work with developers that are coming in. We stay in touch with the normal people that are building the big subdivisions, so we know what they're doing. We rely on that information, plus we maintain system models that accurately predict based on what the Planning Commission is telling us and what these large developments are telling us. And based on those models, like I said, we'll forecast out 1, 3, and 5 year goals, and that at Riviera, that's how we maintain it. It's just by staying in touch through Planning Commission, through working with our developers and the customers that are coming into our area.
In Gulf Shores, we're also very active with the Planning Commission as well. Looking at GSU, what we've done is we've done growth projection studies, looking out 5 to 10 years into the futures, and observing that growth curve that we're on now and projecting that out to see, A, do we have the treatment capacity necessary? Do we have the transmission capacity necessary for these areas? So we utilize those studies to isolate on potential trouble spots in the future. With the planning and zoning in the city of Gulf Shores, working with them, we know the areas of town in which we're going to have the greatest amount of growth going forward, well before there's areas that are developed.
I'd like to jump in, if I could, with what Daphne Utilities is doing. As I mentioned, our involvement with the Planning Commission, so we know early on any development that's coming into our area. But going back literally decades, we've been working with consulting engineers that have helped us determine the growth patterns for our area. And our system has been designed to cover the geographic area that we currently serve. And we're not really growing outside of that geographic service area. We kind of have almost a boundary line where we stop moving to the east, but all of that growth in our area is continuing to happen to the east, and some of our colleagues are covering that. So the stations that we've built, the lines that we've built through the years have been designed to accommodate additional growth. We have pump stations now that were built a decade ago that are designed to handle even more flow coming into them than is coming in now, but we know that those areas will ultimately develop, and those stations will be able to handle that greater impact from those new developments.
At Baldwin County Sewer Service, we have a process where we have a checklist. So we work with all of the engineers on if in any of the potential developers, engineers, whoever inquires about a potential development, we provide an availability letter, and we keep track of that, how many units it is, if they have a preliminary plat or any type of sketch at that time. We keep that on file. We use that for forecasting, and then the first step would be receiving their preliminary plat for the development, and our engineer that we use would review that, make sure the specifications meet our standards for, and just like Danny mentioned, we have standard specs that all of the developments have to abide by. So, so that helps us, and I know a lot of the growth is in our area, but typically it's going to be where our existing lines are, unless that developer or investor wants to pay extra for a line extension fee. So we don't have a set boundary as much as the city limits like Daphne may, but typically a developer isn't going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a line extension. It can be costly for a line extension sometimes, depending on the pipe size and how far it is. So that's constantly looked at. All of the willing and able letters that we send out and the plats that we receive, and keep record of all of that. Jerry, if you want to add to anything.
Really what we do at the end of each year is we forecast for the next 5 years, and we use a weighted average based on the previous 5 years, and then we adjust it as needed based on information that we get from the Census Bureau at the federal level for the local growth models, and then we also look over at the Economic Development Alliance. And like I said, at the end of each year, we look back not only at what we just encountered for the past 12 months, we look back for 5 years, and then we look for any type of anomalies. Was there a shopping center or something like that may not be a recurring type development? But most of our customers, roughly 80%, are residential customers. So that growth is pretty consistent, unlike if you were heavily concentrated with commercial type growth. So we forecast out for the next 5 years with that weighted growth, and we're not necessarily, looking at it on a subdivision by subdivision basis only. That factors into it, but we want that global approach so that we can stay ahead of it with a cushion. And then, like Jenny said, we take into account what we're telling people each year. And the tricky part of this is that I'm sure everybody up here gets a lot of tire kickers, people that are going to build subdivisions, apartment complexes and such. And so you have to tell them that you're willing to serve them, but it's difficult to determine whether that project will ever come to fruition. We keep an eye on that just to make sure that there aren't any surprises out there. But once we do make the hard commitments, then that factors into our hard planning. We kind of have a pencil study, but then we also have one that's in ink that we go by for hard decisions where we're actually spending money. One thing that has helped us tremendously is what's called GIS, and it's a mapping system where all of our customers are. And I'm sure these other guys use it, but we can see our system on a map. And just yesterday, we had an early Christmas. We've got a heat map that is color-coded so that we can see where the growth is occurring. And we can go back and turn on years and turn off years and study it to see, where these customers are moving and where this growth is actually happening. And what that allows us to do isn't just plant-related. We can look at the lines and the direction of the flows to determine based on this growth, especially up in the 31 area. We just upsized the 31 line. We recently upsized 181. Last year we wrapped up an upsize on 64, and then currently we're upsizing the line on Austin. So again, I can't say enough with how important technology is for us from a planning perspective when it comes to what Cade was talking about. Apart from treatment plants, if you can't get it to the treatment plant, you've got a big problem. And so we use those maps, and the heat map is incredibly helpful.
In Fairhope, I mentioned the two transmission capacity projects we have going on that they're designed to look at future flows. But once we get started with that project, we're going to start backing away from that, and we'll be looking at where we can extend force mains to bypass some lift stations so we don't have to increase the capacity of those. And we'll be looking at places where these side stream storage facilities will actually become the next lift station for those regional areas, and we can start looking to concentrate flows in places where we have basically new infrastructure to handle all of that. So, but I will tell all of you, and I know all of you know this, but, it takes time and it takes money and it takes you just got to be steady with the effort that you put in every day. You look at the SCADA system, every rain event that comes through, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. I mean, we're looking at every lift station and we're making sure that if we have a problem, we have a way to address it by turning lift stations off that may be feeding into that lift station that gets a lot of water. And then once you get past that, you start looking at what caused that particular location to have a lot of water coming into it. Sometimes it's a clean out cap that's been broken. Sometimes a directional boring crew has bored through a lateral right across the bottom of a ditch and it's draining the whole ditch into the system. It's hard to describe how often the things that you find that cause the most problems are things that really could have been avoided. Or it's because of neglect of people that just really don't care in terms of what is good for the community, but is more concerned about what's best for themselves. And so we're the education part, and that's why these types of programs are good, because it gives everybody an opportunity to understand, we're as dedicated as we can possibly be and have great operators that operate systems to the absolute best of their ability. But when you start looking at how convenient it can be for people who don't have that same passion for doing the right thing can affect you, then, we need help from a public awareness perspective to make these people aware of what's going on and how to maybe prevent those types of things from occurring. It may be in their neck of the woods or when they're driving by, they can find things just as easy as anybody else can and report those things to us, and we're happy to go check out anything. But as far as capacity issues go, we do have some problems that we're addressing. But here again, we need to get the first project under our belt before we can start building off of that to get further out into the system where some of these issues are. But, we're managing them as we go and doing absolutely the very best we can.
I'd like to add on to what Richard was saying. I know it's off topic of the capacity, but I meant to add it whenever we were having our statements, that we just encourage everyone to be aware of what type of utilities you have on your property, whether you have a septic system or you're connected to sewer service, you have a gravity lateral or a grinder pump, and you know what to do with it, especially when you get a lot of rain. You're familiar with it, and if you dig on your property, you need to call in line locates and that sort of thing. I think if we all work together and do our part, then it'll help, in the long run. I'm guilty of it as well. Before I was working at utility companies, I didn't think of things that were on my property, but it helps just know a little bit about it.
I'll say one thing about planned growth. On the north end, being in the city, our growth is on the outside where we're not serving sewer, and there's still a lot of septic tanks. But we work really close with the health department in planning and determining, can septic tanks be used in that area, or do they need to come to public sewer? So, we do work. We have an employee that sits on the Bay Minette Planning Commission. I commend the Baldwin County Commission's planning department, great planning department. Any development north of I-10, they send us a letter. They let us know what's going on. Communications is the key. We all have to communicate. So, and with that, I'm going to add two things. Cade's here, Mobile Baykeeper, ADEM, Baldwin County Health Department, Alabama Coastal Foundation, all these agencies in the last 2 years, all of us working together. And it is a partnership. It takes all of us working together to try to reach and teach everybody what we're doing. And all of these items and everybody talking about this tonight helps us on this end and every employee out here to make our life a little bit easier, because those kids that we're teaching, if somebody sees it tonight, they'll go home. We've had parents come back and say, this jug here my son brought home and we've been pouring grease down the drain. We're not going to do that anymore. So if we can teach one person a day in each system, it's a great thing. So work with us, educate us, and it is a partnership. And I commend Cade for his work. He has a great brochure here. Last year, and I didn't know this, 2.6 million gallons. We're down 56% of sanitary sewer overflows in Baldwin County. That information is great. That's good information. That tells us that we're committed to doing this, and we're going to continue to be committed to this. So, Cade, thanks for this information. It's great.
Anybody else have a question out there? Raise your hand. Yes, sir. And while she's walking that way, if anybody else who would want to ask one next, so we can kind of come on. No? Okay.
I'm Robert Muck, and I live in Gulf Shores. 2 or 3 of you mentioned where you discharge the treated water post-plant. Would the rest of you mind to share where your water flows to?
In Gulf Shores, our effluent from the wastewater treatment plant flows into the intercoastal waterway, right there at the intersection of 10th Street.
At Riviera, we flow into Wolf Creek, which ultimately flows into Wolf Bay.
North Baldwin Utilities, our larger wastewater treatment facility, flows into the headworks of Hollinger's Creek, and our west side plant flows into a little creek called Martin. It's a tributary of Martin's Creek.
Baldwin County, Fort Morgan is point source discharge, goes into the groundwater. It's not doesn't go into a body of water. Lillian goes into Blackwater. I forget the proper name of the river or the creek in Summerdale. Leaves me at the moment, but that's it. And in Malbus, it's Bay Branch, and Steelwood, it's Styx River.
Fairhope discharge is about 3,000 feet out into Mobile Bay.
I think the rest of you already answered that question. Okay. Anybody else? I've got a question for you. In the past couple of weeks, we've had some big-time rain systems moving through. Not hurricanes, not tropical storms, but just major rain systems dumping a lot of water in our area. And you've got several days in advance to know that this rain system is coming before one of the news media might call it a red day or something like that. What are your procedures to get ready for something like that if you know it's coming and you're going to have all the extra storm water coming in your way? What might you be doing? Richard?
Well, I think the operators at the wastewater plant try to reduce the sludge volume in the clarifiers, and they try to prepare the plant for a pretty good flow to come through. So the solids, which is the biological activity that actually treats the water, remains in the plant. And so they do that. There are times when we'll know a lift station is, we're not sure that the pumps are going to be able to keep up, and we'll go ahead and park a portable pump at that lift station. There are other times where we have generators that we move to different locations. But, the main thing is watching where the most intense rain event falls, because we're far enough between the north side of the system and the south side, and even the east and the west side, to where you can get a concentration of rain in one spot, and that changes everything that goes on in that location, but all the rest of the system is, manageable. So watching the radar is pretty important, and, if there's anything that we can do from making sure the equipment is available, that's what we try to do first, and make it at the location we feel like we may be most vulnerable.
I'd say the same thing. One thing I missed in our system is in 2009, we, fortunate if you're familiar with Bay Minette, we've got a rail that goes through Bay Minette, so we cut our system in half. And so we were able to construct a 36 million gallon equalization pond, and we call it an EQ basin, but it's just a temporary holding facility that's lined in the ground, fenced off, so that when we have these rain events, hurricanes or whatever, and our treatment facilities can't handle the flows coming into them, we can stop the flow, hold it for temporary time period, and then when the flows get back down, reintroduce those back into the plants. So we're watching. That's on an electronic valve, so when the flows come up at the plants, it automatically shuts off. If we have more flows still coming into a plant, we can pump it to that equalization basin. We've never gotten the facility over half capacity out there. The other thing is, when plants break down, it's mechanical. You do have breakdowns. We can take any sewer coming into the plant, if we need to shut it down to go to half capacity, we can bypass that wastewater to that holding facility until we get the repair made, then reintroduce it back to it, and then move on down with our process.
Riviera, we pretty much the same thing as these guys are saying. You know, we'll activate our emergency action plan, which involves ensuring critical lift stations and things like that are operational, making sure we have bypass pumps available, making sure that our lagoon is pumped down so that we can receive the excess flow, increase our standby personnel, making sure that we have more people available to respond as soon as something happens. But, you know, if we have enough, we typically will activate our emergency action plan a day or two out ahead of time, so that way we know what we're dealing with before it gets here.
Well, at Daphne Utilities, again, similar to what everybody else is saying, at our plant, we have some techniques that we can use related to sludge blankets and aeration in order to ensure that excess stormwater coming into the plant doesn't have a major impact on us. We're fortunate that we have 2 separate treatment trains at our plant, so we can send flow to one of the other plants that we have there on site, or move flow back and forth in order to help deal with solids issues that we may have from a lot of rain coming in. We happen to have a 500,000 gallon side stream storage tank, and we have automated controls that if flows get too high coming into the 98 corridor, then we can automatically shift that flow over to that tank. As far as getting ready prior to a storm, we ensure that all of that is working. We ensure that that tank is completely empty from the previous storm that we may have had. We have bypass pumps, and we have generators that we move around the system and we jockey in place at our most critical lift stations. And then during storm events, we actually have folks out working in order to manage the flow coming in, and we can jockey pumps on and off and utilize our system for storage so that we don't send all of that excess flow to the treatment plant.
At Gulf Shores, in the collection system, we have redundant control systems in our major lift station control panels. We've got a SCADA system set up to where we're notified with any problems occur out there in the system. We have bypass pumps and generators as well that we can deploy out there. When we see that a storm system is coming, there at the treatment plant, we have the equalization basin that we can get it to the point where we have the necessary room to handle whatever's thrown at us. We also have the 10 million gallons of emergency storage that can be utilized at any given time. Typically, we keep that as clear as we can, you know, because we do live in one of the rainiest areas in the nation, and down here on the coast, you know, everybody knows that we deal with hurricanes and tropical storms, so that's the reason when we have that built into the facility, so that we can handle as big a hit as it can, you know, as big a hit as we can anyway.
At Baldwin County Sewer Service, we have side stream storage ponds that are lined at each one of our plants other than Steelwood. Our flows don't go directly to the plant. They go to the pond at any rate that they're coming in, whether it's high or low. And then throughout the day, whether it's a rain event or not, we're based on calculations and the operator's judgment, they're feeding the plant at a certain rate. And so during a high rain event, they just let the pond build up. They would prepare for the rain event prior if they have the opportunity to pump the ponds down. But those ponds help us mitigate the rainfall by accommodating the additional flow while we're still feeding the plant at a steady rate. The plant doesn't know any difference whether it's raining or not with us flowing into the ponds before that flow reaches the plant. In addition to that, like the other guys, we've got, you know, a fleet of trucks, bypass pumps and generators. We'll add a couple more guys to the on-call list for that period of time, and then we'll have another person or two watching the telemetry on their computers and phones so that they're aware of problematic areas when they look at the radar and see the heavy rainfall. And the biggest issue that we see is just power outages, whether it's a lightning strike or what, or maybe a direct lightning strike to a lift station. That's the main thing that we see during a rain event is just power that goes off and on because of lightning strikes.
Like most of the other utilities here, we have ways to remotely monitor our pumping stations, and just having that ability to get that information quickly. And when an event happens, if we have a high level alarm, or like you said, a power outage, where before, 10 years ago, that was something that most of us didn't have the ability to do. So just being able to get that notification that you've lost power at this pumping station, you can mobilize people with generators or bypass pumps or other equipment in order to get those corrected. So we're a smaller system. We don't have a lot of equipment necessarily that we have on standby, but we do have companies that we work with, rental companies that have this equipment that we can access that. We do have one bypass pump that we use at one of our primary lift stations. And of course, prior to any pending storm event, we make sure that equipment is serviced and fueled up and ready to go during the rain event.
All right, thank you. Did that generate any thoughts for questions from anybody out here just yet? Yes? Hang on, wait for the microphone.
Yes, you were talking about the storm waters that come in, which seems that would dilute the concentration of what's coming into your system. Baldwin County is very active in events, concerts, Hangout Fest. Each town seems to have their different events like Strawberry Festival, Art in the Park, things like that, that would draw abnormally high populations to that certain area for that day. And that seems to me that would increase the concentration levels of the waste inside that's coming to your system. Dealing with dilution is one thing, but what about when it becomes more concentrated in that flow? How does your plants process that extra concentration that's coming into you, like in that surge of that day or that week?
The trick to dealing with concentrated wastewater is all about wastewater microbiology. The concentration or the difference wastewater microbiology that you have in your system, or the mixed liquor suspended solids concentration or volatile solids, which is your bug count, will give you the ability to either process at higher rates of BOD or digest more organics that come in the situations of like, say, festivals or whatever else that you may have. Also, I'm sure that everybody else is basically the same way, but every one of us, or at least at Gulf Shores, we have extended aeration basin oxidation ditches. The activated sludge process is what we use. We have basically 5 blowers on one tank and 4 more blowers on another tank, and we can extend that process of aeration out as long as we need to in order to be able to digest the BOD that comes in on the concentrated waste, such as a festival or something like that would throw at us.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
I have a bunch of operators out there that could probably answer that question a lot better than I could.
Okay. Any other questions? Real quick, I have another one for you. Well, we've talked and seen a picture of a clean out, and we talked a little bit about them and how they can be used or misused. Is it in the code for new construction to have clean outs at all properties, and how are you dealing with this in various places, or what do you see? How important are clean outs in your business for handling what's coming through, and what's been the biggest problems with them perhaps that you've seen But talk a little bit about the code, because everybody ought to understand that a little better. We mentioned it in Sewer 101. Richard, we talked about this a little bit offline.
We did, and I like what Jason's talking about with a concrete collar around the top of the cleanout so that it is more protected. But cleanouts are basically a function of the plumbing code, and you'll have a cleanout around the perimeter of your house where your main sewer drains out from the house.
So the builder should be putting them in because it's part of code.
Yeah, they should be in. I will say houses that are older than the last 25 or 30 years, if they do have a clean out, they may be covered. They may be in the middle of a planting area that they're difficult to find. And most people really don't know where they are anyway. But from the clean out outside the house, there's specific limits on how far a line can travel before you have another clean out, or if there are bends in it. Ideally, we would love to have one right at the edge of the right-of-way that would be protected, similar to what Jason's talking about, where that would be the line where we would accept responsibilities on the right-of-way side of that clean-out, just like a water meter would be. A water service would be responsible for the service getting to the meter, and then the homeowner would be responsible for everything going into the property. But the problem with clean-outs that we experience are, they're out of sight, out of mind a lot of times, and what you wind up finding are holes in the yard that are where a clean-out used to be, but either UV damage from sunlight or tractors mowing over them, they've disappeared, and all you have now is a hole in the ground that connects straight to the sewer line. And if it happens to be in a low area or along a drain, then it's going to catch a lot of water. So that's one of the public awareness things, though. And the best way to find those types of issues are through smoke testing. And you can smoke test your sewer line on the street, and you'll see smoke coming out of each household stack, as the vent pipes in the house. But you'll also see smoke coming out of the ground where there may be a break in the lateral line or a clean out that's missing. And that's an effective way to find some of those inflow problems too. And it doesn't take much. You get 5 or 10 gallons a minute flowing into a 4-inch lateral, and you multiply that by 10 or 15, and all of a sudden you're looking at more capacity coming into the system than the pumps were ever designed to pump. And that's where the biggest issues are, is capturing the inflow issues that start to put a stress on the pumping systems that you have. And then that's part of our goal in doing the rehabilitation work, is to go through and find all of those locations and either have the property owner fix what they have issues with, or we fix what we have issues with within the right-of-way.
What about large facilities like condominiums and things like that? Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, I know y'all have a plethora of them. Do you have any problems with handling cleanouts in places like that?
We do. We've seen parking lots of condominiums being drained through a clean out. Every time we have a heavy rain, we're going to send personnel out from the collection system to take a peek at different trouble spots that we've known of in the past, and also look for new ones. Mm-hmm. But we have seen that at a few condominiums where they've drained their parking lot using the clean out.
Oh, wow.
And I'll just add to that, we encounter the same type of issues with cleanouts, and we have approximately 40% of our system is gravity, but then you have cleanouts with the pressure system as well. But the same with the grinder pumps, they have a vent on the top, and if you're in a low-lying area or an area that it floods around your grinder pump, it's recommended to turn it off during that rain event and then make a note to turn it back on, so that your pump isn't constantly pumping in water and then pumping it into the sewer system, and it burns up the pump faster as well. And then just like we said before, just being aware of what you have so that you can be prepared for things like that. I think a lot of us have materials that we provide to educate the community and customers on what to keep out of the drains and what to do with their septic systems or sewer systems. We have if you may have seen out there, magnets, grease containers. We have bathroom and kitchen signs for rental properties or commercial properties, or just I have one in my personal house, just reminding people not to put wipes in my half bathroom, or visitors who are staying at our house. You know, it's just education and just simple things.
You're talking about those Cottonelle flushable wipes. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. Yeah.
You're not supposed to flush those down
They
the toilet?
they don't flush. They don't break down fast enough, unfortunately.
Even though they say flushable
Yes.
on the thing?
Yeah, I think the fine
Don't do
print
that.
gives a little more information on that.
Okay.
The other issue that we see being a resort-type community is when the vacation season heats up. You know, all of the vacationers come in, they don't wash off before they get into the house, they bring the sand in, they bring the grease whenever they're leaving and checking out, pour everything down the drain, and we see a big uptick in maintenance calls in these types of rental properties, you know, because of just the lack of knowledge.
How
And
quickly can that grease clog up a drain?
it varies, just depends on the quantity of grease that they're putting it in there, the design of the system, whether it's a condominium they're putting grease down the drain for, or a beach house. But down Fort Morgan Road, there's a lot of maintenance calls during the peak tourist season because of, you know, visitors either ignorant of the proper care of a sewer system or just, you know, negligent because it's not theirs.
When we have stormwater that comes into your systems, what are some of the big things that you're having to deal with that you're not often like totally ready for? Say coming out of a lake forest subdivision, let's say.
Well, with the heavy rain, like you're talking about, I mean, it can overwhelm the capacity of the pipes to actually carry that amount of water. And then if that amount of water gets to the pumps, it could overwhelm the capacity of the pumps to actually pump it. So and it's happened, if you find, you know, an open manhole somewhere that next to a creek, and the creek rises and it goes underwater, it can completely overwhelm the capacity of the pipes and the pumps. So we have a very...
Have you mentioned like fertilizers and other things like that also come into your system?
Okay, that's a good point. I didn't realize that's what you were asking. Yeah, so what we're talking about then is our urban runoff, and every time it rains, and the fertilizers and even pet waste that gets washed into our streams and creeks that create, you know, obviously issues for our environment. The nitrogen and the phosphates and the fertilizers that are on people's yards can create algal blooms, and of course pet waste can create high bacteria levels in our creeks and streams.
Mm-hmm. Going from what he said, you know, your question was, does it, you know, what challenges does that present to the wastewater treatment plant having, you know, large amounts of rainwater come in? Couple of things that not a lot of people may think of. The first thing that's going to happen is all of the waste that's in that line is coming to you in one surge. So you're going to get a massive hit of biochemical oxygen demand and ammonia right out of the gate. And then you're going to have a prolonged period where you have highly diluted rainwater runoff that is going to come into your plant. And believe it or not, that affects you too, because your microbiology needs food. So now that you've just had to deal with that big slug of highly concentrated waste that was thrown at you all at one time. Now you're going to have that area where it's not going to get any food. That presents issues of its own because that affects settling in your secondary clarifiers, and for you know, plants that may be struggling a little bit in that area due to some wastewater microbiology issues, that can present an issue, a very severe issue, so far as your ability to process at high rates. Also, in mentioning, you know, rainwater runoff, I don't know, you know, very many people here that could deal with, you know, most people don't realize that, you know, the graphic that she was showing before, where there was 27,000 gallons per inch of rain per acre. In the coverage area of just Gulf Shores alone, a 1-inch rainfall is going to equal somewhere in the neighborhood of 563 million gallons. You know, obviously not all of that is going to come into the system, not even, well, actually not even 1/100% is going to come into our system. However, when you look at what that potential there is, because of line breaks or anything that you may not be aware of as a system operator, that is something that can be an extreme challenge to be able to deal with. I've heard some folks in the public on some radio talk shows that say, you know, why this is one of the rainiest areas in the country. Why can't we deal with this? Why can't we put this to bed? Why don't we know how to deal, you know, why is this an issue still? And to be quite honest with you, the challenge that we faced as wastewater treatment providers, or, you know, wastewater providers, is we don't always know where those issues are at. You know, in Gulf Shores, we have, it's kind of a blessing where a lot of our pipes are below the water table. So we find out about breaks pretty doggone quickly. You have a break, you're going to have a sinkhole pretty quick. I've got a slide that I gave you earlier where it shows a sinkhole. We excavated it out where a transformer, an electrical transformer, fell into a sinkhole just about. And it's because of a line break where a contractor hit one of our lines and actually repaired it and didn't tell us. But the manner in which they repaired it is, you know, was we using the conduit that they had on hand. And so this produced a situation where the electrical transformer almost fell into the ground. Well, see, in Gulf Shores, we have that luxury where ours shows up pretty quickly. Everywhere else in the county, you're dealing with heavier soils. You're not going to know you have an issue, especially if you're above the water table. You're not going to know you have an issue until the next heavy rain. So that is the time that those things will show up. It's also the time when you have the least amount of time to deal with it. So that is the biggest challenge that we face every time it rains.
Okay. All right, any other questions? No? Well, y'all give a hand for the time and the expertise. There is a lot of knowledge sitting up on that stage, as you can hear. This is not a simple process to treat all of our wastewater. And as it has been said in a couple of meetings, the flow never stops. It just doesn't. Think about it. All across our county, all day long, 24/7, 365, it's always flowing into those treatment systems. Commissioner Gruber, would you like to say a few words before we close out?
Again, I'd like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know we didn't have a very big crowd of citizens here, but the ones that we do have, they understand a little bit more, I think, what's going on. And I know y'all go through a lot of wear and tear. And I appreciate, you know, the service that you're all providing. You know, if you look at, you know, go back and look at the years back, we didn't have the SCADA system, you know, that wasn't very around. Well, you had a lot more. But I think y'all are moving and moving and moving, and the spills are getting less, the amount's getting less. I mean, it's not that nobody's not doing anything about it. Everybody's working very hard because they want to be their part to protect the environment. And I'm telling you, the biggest thing, a lot of it is stormwater. A lot of it is still stormwater. And I think that's our next step, is to look at something to do with stormwater. You look at the growth that we're having. You're looking at a minute ago, if you looked at the chart where it said we had 200, and by 2018 we would have 218,000 people. We've just passed Shelby County, and the rate we're going, Montgomery County has got 224,000 people. We're going to pass Montgomery County. People don't realize that's a lot of folks. You know, when you're we're passing up what's been in the we call the big boys, you know, all these years. And if you just ride around this county, we haven't even dented the density. If you just stop looking, just the growth that's happening, but it's not happening like you see some areas like Belforce. You see it really, really closing in on it, but it's just so much going out there that and people have found Baldwin County is the place to live. You know, I've enjoyed my years that I've lived here. So but anyway, thank you all again. And Mayor Murphy, would you like to say something? I know, and I've got also Commissioner.
God bless you all and be safe going home.
Yep. Commissioner Ball, you have anything? Okay. And again, thank you all very much, and I want to give you an applaud, for what, y'all took your time out to come here and try to educate the folks, and again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And let me also say thank you to Dan. Dan has really worked hard on trying to get this going. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Y'all drive safely on the way home, please.
Thank you, sir.
You, man. Appreciate it.